Makashule Gana has indicated that he will contest the party leadership and will also fight to keep the DA focused on policy that will address historical injustice, and that he won't duck tackling the issue of race. But how will Gana do this if he is elected amid a policy shift away from redressing inequality based on race? He now joins me in the studio, and of course also I am joined by political journalist and author Jan Joubert. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so very much for coming to speak to us on The Fix here. Mr. Gana, how are you going to deal with the question of historical injustice based on race, given that Helen Zille recently at a press club said that she wants every policy document of the DA to reflect that the DA is not going to use race as a criteria to advance people and to look at how South Africa is going to change?
Good morning, Karima, and good morning to the viewers. Thanks for having us. The important thing for me, even when one looks at what has happened in the last couple of weeks, it's the starting point being the offer that we gave to South Africa. And in that offer that 3.6 million South Africans actually trusted us to represent them, we had an issue of race as a proxy for disadvantage, a race-based redress. And for me, we do this because we acknowledge and recognize that the injustices of our past are still here with us. And there's a responsibility, a moral duty on us as a representative of the people to work extra hard to ensure that we are able to redress the injustices of the past. That's the project that I believe we as a DA cannot shy away from. Because for me, it's how best do we build a DA that's able to serve the country, that enables a parent that lives in Orange Farm, that has to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning to come and work in the northern suburbs of Johannesburg, to get back home at 9 o'clock in the evening, to be a parent to their children. And that, for me, is a project that I've committed myself to since I joined the DA in 2002. And it's a project that I will continue to work for. Because for me, redressing the injustice of the past is non-negotiable.
Mr. Gana, your views on this is very well known. Let's take a listen to your, contestant or your opposition in the position for leadership, John Steenhuisen, currently the parliamentary leader of the Democratic Alliance. Let's take a listen to him and his view on race quickly.
I certainly don't believe there's anybody who doesn't believe that race is a proxy for disadvantage in South Africa. But I think that the viewpoint is that it's not the only proxy for disadvantage. It's not something that's off the table. I just think it is something that needs a little bit more consideration before we go. And as I said, my primary focus at the moment is Parliament.
Now, Jan Joubert, that is Mr. Steenhuisen saying that he acknowledges the historical injustices of the past and that they were based on race, and in order to address them, one needs to actually use race as a determining factor. You were at both his speech and the speech that Helen Zille gave recently to the press club down in Cape Town. In the article that you've written that I recommend everyone should read, it's titled Helen Zille Sets Out DA's Road to Recovery. She talks about race and the EFF and more. You say in this piece that she actually diverges from John Steenhuisen on the issue of race and on the EFF. What exactly did Helen Zille say on the issue of race?
She made a very long speech, so I'll take up the rest of your show if I have to say everything she said.
I'll interrupt you, don't worry.
But how? You won't interrupt Zille, I'll tell you that. But I would venture to say that she thinks that race must vanish from any policy proposal or any internal discussion document of the DA, whereas Mr. Steenhuisen and Mr. Gana believe that poverty levels are still exacerbated to the level at which people are poor through the problems of the past. And I think the way to look at that is to ask whether any white person is as poor as the poorest black person. And I'm going to take an example from Khayelitsha outside Cape Town, which is not a mythical space, it's a place where people live. So it's not just, I'm not saying the Cape Flats or Khayelitsha, I'm meaning that lots of people send their children to the Western Cape from the Eastern Cape for education, but then they have nowhere to stay, and they literally live in holes in the ground covered by corrugated iron. Now, I don't think there's a single white person in South Africa who lives in a hole in the ground in the dunes outside a rather difficult township covered by corrugated iron. So that is the argument Mr. Steenhuisen and Mr. Gana makes. As for the EFF, Zille believes that the DA should not be cooperating with the EFF. And Steenhuisen, and I don't know what your position is, Makashule, but their position is that if the DA were not to cooperate with the EFF, say in Johannesburg, what would you leave the DA voter in Johannesburg with? The option is to either have an ANC-EFF coalition or to have no real government. So there's a vast difference there. These two issues at this early stage of the leadership contest, which, yes, is now for the interim leader, but also is in April for the actual leadership, I think those are two lines that she drew in the sand at the press club, and where Mr. Steenhuisen was just shown, that was after he had spoken at the press club, and there are clear differences there.
Now, Mr. Gana, how do you forge ahead and attract a black voter like the one that Mr. Joubert has been describing here, who comes to the Western Cape, lives in a hole covered by corrugated iron, and you have a federal chair of the DA, one of the most powerful positions in the party, saying that race should not feature in any policy document of the Democratic Alliance. If you win, or even if Mr. Steenhuisen wins, how are you going to engage Helen Zille on this matter?
Yeah, when I started, Karima, I pointed out that there are 3.6 million South Africans that when they woke up in May to go and vote, in one of our key offers was the need to redress. Because in our view, we do not see reconciliation that will happen by itself, you know, without redressing the injustice of the past.
Mr. Makashule,
the important thing...
No, with respect, your views on redress are well known. You've explained it very eloquently. What I want to know is, how are you going to tell Helen Zille that? Please answer that
Helen
question.
Zille is not the party.
But she is the federal chair.
No, she is the federal chair. I am the chairperson of MPL Network, but I cannot claim to be the party. Here's the thing. What I'm trying to show you is that we have 3.6 million who have supported a particular view. Helen is expressing her own view. What we're going to do, we're going to go to a policy conference, and we are going to address the issues that pertains to injustices of the past. And
let's talk about who's going to go to this policy conference, because your structure works in a very different way than other parties. It works in the DA way,
yes.
No, yes. So will those black masses who are members of the DA, who are activists on the ground at the DA, will they actually have a say at this policy conference? Will they even have the right to attend this policy conference where they can influence this debate?
You see, Karima, the members of the DA, regardless whether they are black, white, colored, Indian, male or female, will have an opportunity.
No, who will attend? Will these masses of activists that voted for you, that are DA members, are they coming? Give us the criteria for who attends the policy conference.
Karima, at the last Federal Congress, if you had paid attention, you'll have recognized that one of the important clauses that we passed there is that 50% of the delegates that will attend our congresses, it's made up of non-public reps, which are our activists and members on the ground. That's inside the Constitution. So there's no one that will come in and change what resides in the Constitution. And that's the point that I'm trying to make, is that that's not a point of debate. So I cannot come and sit here and debate something that already exists in our Constitution. That's that's the point that I was trying to make, that members of the DA across the length and breadth of this country will have a say in the policy direction of the party.
Okay, so given the fact that they've made way for more representation to come from the ground, and that ground is in historically black townships, Jan, will they, given that Helen Zille is, as federal chair, in charge of the structures of the DA on a daily basis, will they be able to, for example, out-argue and even convince and win the policy debate against the Helen Zille faction, who is absolutely diametrically opposed to what Mr. Gana is saying?
That's a fascinating situation. Now, if we knew, they wouldn't have to have the policy conference. We could just tell them. But I think we should not do that. So the short answer, Makashule, to the question that Karima asked you, in my understanding, is that I don't know how the policy conference is going to be constituted. But, you know, I'm allowed to say that. But I don't know whether they've decided exactly how to constitute it. There's never been a policy conference. But he's correct on the constitution of the DA. I don't think, though, that the constitution refers to policy conferences on my reading. So I think there's a bit of an open door.
Yes. So, in fact, those very grassroots members could yet be excluded. Because, or included. But let's, for example, stay with the traditional way in which DA gatherings are held. The mass of the party doesn't attend. They have quite a hierarchical structure. If that structure and that tradition is maintained, will the view that Mr. Gana is advocating have any traction in terms of numbers?
It will have traction. And one must
enough traction, though, to win?
No, Karima, I don't know. But that's why they're having the conference. You know? I mean, if we knew, there wouldn't be one. So the thing is, what you have explained about the masses, that's true for any political party. That's why you have a conference. There's no venue that can accommodate 3.6 million people. So, and many DA supporters do not belong to the DA. But what I think we must be careful of is to put a binary view which says this side will take on that side. It might well be that they find some sort of compromise. And I would suggest that one of the compromises might be that the wording of the problem is wrong, where it's not about poverty being an indicator of race being a proxy for poverty. It is actually, on my understanding, on race being a proxy for wealth, which means that obviously, and I really say this with the greatest of conviction, the poorest people in the country are black. But you can no longer say the wealthiest people in the country are white. So I think the question that needs to be answered is on empowerment. Do you re-empower the people who are already wealthy? Does your child, for instance, I don't know whether you have one, but if you had one, is your child disadvantaged? It's a tough question, and it's not clear what the answer is. And I think the point the Zille people are making very poorly, and which I struggle to agree with at all, but I'm just saying what I think they're saying, is that you don't want to give the wealthy more, thereby giving the poor less. But I think they're going by it completely the wrong way.
Mr. Gana, you were saying that Helen Zille is one person. Her view is her view. It's not the party's view. And I accept that. That is what all political parties say. But the reality is that individuals have very strong influences in parties. Recently, when Ms. Zille spoke, the kind of applause, according to Jan's article that you got, was far outweighing that of Mr. Steenhuisen, who had just spoken 3 days before. And she spoke on the exact same topic. And he described the demographic at that meeting as liberal Cape establishment, wealthy, white, and clearly the backbone of the DA.
I didn't say it's the backbone of the DA.
No, I'm saying it's the backbone of the DA in terms of funding. Now, when Musi Maimane was asked to step aside, one of the key funders of the DA actually accompanied the person. Are you afraid that if you, for example, should be elected, that the DA's traditional funders will take their money elsewhere?
That hasn't been a consideration for me. If there will be a funder that will say that I'm no longer funding the DA because the DA seeks to redress the injustices of the past, then I'll have a big problem. Because if you are funding us so that we don't redress the injustices of the past, then maybe you should consider not funding us. Because our being is not for ourselves. We don't exist for ourselves. We exist to build an inclusive South Africa. And anyone that takes a cent to give the DA, it must be on the basis that we are better together than when we are divided. And we need to build an inclusive South Africa. So
that's a very noble thing to say, and I agree with you. But let me just look at the track record of the DA. So the last DA leader, Mmusi Maimane, ran a campaign against the person in the Western Cape to become party leader. And that person opened his books and told people how he funded his campaign. Mmusi Maimane didn't do that. We don't know who funded his internal campaign, right? And he hasn't answered that question up until today. Later on, when people wanted to get rid of him, we heard of his relationship with Mr. Ewister via the Fortuna that he was driving, and of course the house that he was paying rent in Cape Town that he registered as a property of his, even though he didn't own it. And we also heard that the person whose house it really is the chairperson of his family trust. So the question of money is a very real thing in politics, Mr. Gana. You can't dismiss it, and however much passionate and idealistic you are about it, the reality is elections cost money, and if you don't have money, you're going to struggle to run an effective campaign. What is going to be your message to the funders who actually brought Helen Zille back?
But did they?
No, I want to ask Mr. Gana
Karima,
that question.
You are coming from a particular point which I don't agree with at all. I will not argue that Helen Zille, for some reason, there are funders behind there or there are no funders. I don't know that. But the important thing is, if you're a funder and you fund the DA, you must be able to understand that we exist to build an inclusive South Africa. You must be able to understand that we need to govern in more areas. We need to govern in Johannesburg. We need to redress the injustices of the past. So if you do not agree with that, what do you agree with? Because you cannot then say, I want the DA that must mimic the Freedom Front.
Absolutely.
If that funder exists, then why am I even taking their money?
I couldn't agree with you more. So who's funding your campaign to lead the party?
You know, the thing is, this campaign, I'm funding it myself because I've learned, Jan was still in Parliament then, that the Ethic Committee wanted to deal with me for the 2015 Congress. So this particular campaign, I'm funding it from my own pocket. So
are you prepared to open your book so we can come and see?
You want to see my bank account?
Yes.
You can come and see.
Okay, we'll take you up on that offer. I know that Jan is itching to get in here, but I want to ask you a question about the EFF, because that's another key point, according to Jan's piece, around which Ms. Zille and Mr. Steenhuisen had disagreed. Now, you run several municipalities with the assistance of the EFF through an arrangement. I don't want to call it a relationship, because you will both dispute that you have it, even though you have. But I want to ask you specifically about the experience in Tshwane. We have a situation where almost everybody in the mayor's office, the previous mayor's office, and even currently, didn't have the proper qualifications that they were supposed to have. And you didn't own up to that. In fact, the city manager said that SACA had actually vetted everybody. And SACA actually called into my show that I used to host on 702, the Karima Brown show, and said that there's no such thing. They don't have a contract with the city of Tshwane, that the people there have never been vetted by them. In fact, in a few days' time, I believe we will soon find out that the current traffic chief there doesn't have the qualifications that they have. Why has the DA with the EFF been involved in so much scandal around issues of people's qualifications, the Glad Africa contract, the idea that the EFF is effectively rent seekers from the DA? They allow you to run the place, but you have to funnel the contracts to them.
Karima, you have said a mouthful.
Let's just start with the unqualified people.
The important thing, I mean, that issue was dealt with. You can go to the mayor's office now in Tshwane, look at the people that are working there. You'll be so amazed by the qualifications that they have. But I have to say this, from where we are, we will continue to have a issue-by-issue relationship with the EFF. As we're going to elect a new mayor in Johannesburg on the 28th of November, we're going to have interactions with the EFF, because it is in our interest as a DA in Johannesburg, the DA in Gauteng, the DA nationally, that we continue governing in Johannesburg. And that's the expression that...
so you support the ongoing relationship, and you do that because you want to control those metros and those municipalities that you govern?
We believe that the citizens of Johannesburg are better off with a DA government than with an ANC government, and we'll continue to want to lead Johannesburg.
How is that going to go down with Helen Zille?
Not well. Helen Zille is a lot of things, but she's not unclear. She leaves you no doubt, and I think that those people at Calvin Grove that you referred to, that's what they like. You know, they're not left in any doubt about what she means. What I want to quickly speak about is the matter of funders and whether they were represented on the panel which Mr. Maimane appointed by himself to look at the road forward, and then they turned on him and said he must go. Basically, there were 4 people appointed, as my understanding goes, of which 3 people participated. It was Moeletsi Mbeki, who only went to 1 or 2 meetings and then left, just didn't come again. Ryan Kitsia, Tony Leon and Michiel Leroux. And the funder you are speaking about is Michiel Leroux. I am not clear that he is a funder of the DA. What I do know is a matter of public record, is that he funded his son working for Cope. And that's on public record because the son wrote a hilarious book on it. But I don't believe that Michiel Leroux was put there to represent any funders of the DA, and as I say, I really don't know whether he is one. I think he was put on there, or my understanding is, for his economic expertise. So there is a narrative which says the funders stepped in and had Musi Maimane removed. That's a nice story, but I challenge anyone to put one iota of proof on the table that that's the case. I'm not saying it's not the case, but I say he who accuses must prove, and I don't see the proof of that.
Okay, we're out of time, but Mr. Makashule, I'm going to give you one last question, 30 seconds. Why should people vote for you instead of any of the other candidates, including John Steenhuisen, to lead the Democratic Alliance?
One, I believe that we do need a new thinking. I don't believe that the DA needs to focus itself on issues of economic justice, social justice, and environmental justice. And I bring with me over 17 years of experience in all the leadership structures of the DA. And I have shown in the last 17 years that, one, I'm committed to the cause of the DA, and I want to build the DA that is a true home to all South Africans and can improve the lives of all South Africans.
All right, Mr. Gana, on that note, thank you very much. Jan, thank you so much for being in Johannesburg for a change.
Pleasure.
It was really great to have you, and we'll, of course, watch whether you make it or not. Up next, we take a look at the stories making headlines in the weekend newspapers. Stay tuned.